Welcome to the More Than Fitness podcast.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Minisode number 49 on the More Than Fitness podcast. It is a beautiful Friday right now at the time of recording this. I don't know what it looks like outside when you're listening to this or watching this, but I hope you're having a great day. And I hope to make your day even better after I tell you how to gain muscle. Now, this is the second part of my last minisode, basically, or not necessarily the second part, but this is along the same lines of the direction that I'm trying to go with this minisode. I'm trying to tell you exactly what you need to do. So people always come up and ask me, okay, just tell me what I need to do to lose fat or to build muscle, right? They just want the bare bones. Shoot it to them straight. I don't have to justify what I'm saying. I don't have to go through the science or why I think that or anything. They're just like, tell me the shit I need to know so that I can get the goal that I'm after. And so for the last minisode, I did how to lose fat. And for this minisode, I'm going to do how to gain muscle. Of course, you can do both at the same time, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to keep one as how to lose fat. And that would be if your goal is predominantly to lose fat. I would advise to pick one or the other, either to gain muscle or to lose fat, so that you can focus all of your energy in one direction or the other, so that you can get the best results possible. Again, you can do both at the same time, but it's trickier, and you can risk spinning your wheels and not making any progress at all. So pick one, how to lose fat or how to gain muscle. In this minisode, we're going to talk about how to gain muscle. So I'm giving you the exact action steps you need to take after everything that I've learned from schooling, getting my degree, becoming a registered dietitian, and then also being a personal trainer for several years and coaching hundreds of people, right? So here we go. How to gain muscle. Just like in the last one with how to lose fat, the first thing still comes down to educating yourself. Because without that baseline awareness, that initial awareness is how you create any change. This isn't just with gaining muscle or losing fat. This is with anything in life. You have to understand what you're doing currently so that you can either make adjustments or not make adjustments in as you move forward and guide future decisions. So this has to do with nutrition first. So again, you have to track what you're eating, and you can track it by using an app, by writing things down, by taking pictures of your food, et cetera, et cetera. There's many different ways to do that, but start off with tracking your food. The next thing would be to learn proper lifting technique. And real quick, I mentioned this in the last one, but I'm going to mention in this one too. This is all written down in an article form. It's just mattmcleod.org/gain muscle, one word, gain muscle, right? And so everything that I'm saying, don't worry about writing it down or anything. I'm going to include the link in the description to the article and you can check it out. And then I also have tons of hyperlinks inside the article to give you some more resources to do exactly what I'm telling you. So learn proper lifting technique, and I have some quick tutorials that you can use in the blog post. Also, under educating yourself, you need to learn from experts who are credible. And when I say credible, they need to be evidence-based, so they follow the science and they keep up with the scientific literature and research, but they also have real life experience working with real people and real issues and also getting them results. You also want to make sure they are people-centric and are genuine in their actions over time. Making sure that they aren't a dick and they aren't just trying to sell you something is probably a good idea. And lastly, under educate yourself is to, again, hire a coach to hold you accountable and mentor you. Here I am. If you want to work with me, I would love to work with you, or at least see if you could apply to work with me and we can see if we're a good fit. You can do that by clicking one of the links in the description. Would love to work with you. Okay, the second part of gaining muscle is find a training style that is fun, effective, and stick-withable. Yeah, I think I'm the first person to ever say stick-withable, or at least in the fitness sense. Find a training style that is fun, effective, and stick-withable. Resistance training forces your muscles to hypertrophy. That's the reason why we lift weights, is to grow our muscles. Well, at least part of the reasons. For the sake of this podcast, we are lifting weights to make our muscles grow. And contrary to popular belief, muscle building is more dependent on one's training, not nutrition. So in the fat loss minisode, I talked about how you should lose fat primarily by focusing on your diet and not on your exercise. So with this one, it's going to be the reverse. To build muscle, you definitely, it's not like 80% training or 20% nutrition or whatever. That's ridiculous to think that it's a dichotomy between the two. It's both. It's 100% training and 100% nutrition. However, training with building muscle, you can't just eat food and grow muscle. So therefore, you better pay attention to the resistance training that you're doing on a regular basis. And yeah, so another part I had on here was use a training style that is optimal for you, i.e. bodybuilding style workouts typically build the most muscle, but this won't be true if you hate lifting that way, right? Because again, we're trying to find something that's sustainable over time. If you hate lifting like a bodybuilder, you're probably not going to put in as much effort as you should to grow muscle over time. And also, life is too short to go to the gym and do shit you hate to get a result whenever there's other ways, there's other tools to use around it. So if that is the case, something like CrossFit or Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting or strongman training styles may match much closer to your quote unquote optimal training style. That's totally fine. Whatever's fun. Sure, it may not be the best like scientific way to build muscle. There's a reason why bodybuilders are as big as they are. But that doesn't mean you can't get jacked by powerlifting or doing strongman or CrossFit or whatever. Just look at those people and you can tell they have no issue building muscle. But yeah, consistency is the backbone to making progress over time. A quote unquote perfect plan is useless if you fail to adhere to it long time. And then uncoincidentally, the person with the most muscle in the gym is often the most consistent. You see a huge jack guy walking around the gym, it's probably because he's been training for 20 years hard over time, and he's been consistent week after week after week after week. This shit just adds up, right? Okay, the third thing on here about how to gain muscle. So real quick, the first one was educate yourself. The second is find a training style that is fun, effective, and stick-withable. And the third is injury prevention needs to be your highest priority. You cannot lift if you're injured. You cannot gain muscle if you cannot lift, right? It makes perfect sense. And that's why you need to make it your highest priority. This is also why warming up is going to be important. Of course, for a myriad of reasons, but you can't just go into your work sets cold. And the thing is like a lot of younger people can get away with this just because they're younger. But over time, those shitty warm-up techniques or lack of warming up and just jumping into your straight heavy sets, having terrible form and things, it's going to slowly chip away at your joints and tendons and things over time. And by the time that you're 35 or whatever, or I even see like 25-year-olds wearing elbow sleeves. They're covered in Tiger Balm, which is just like an ointment for warming your elbow joints and things like that, your muscles up, right? Like if you need all of that shit and you're still super young, you definitely are not on the right path. You just think like by the time that you're 40, you're going to be done. So making sure that you do warm up properly, and then also making sure that we focus on technique and we emphasize proper technique over everything. Again, we're trying to gain muscle here. So if you are trying to gain muscle, you need to make sure injury prevention is your highest priority. And that also means that technique needs to be pristine. You can also manage your fatigue by using rate of perceived exertion, so that's RPE, or reps in reserves, so that's RIR, and deloads as well. Real quick, if you want to learn more about these, I would definitely recommend to go to the blog post and click the links that I have linked in here. But rate of perceived exertion is just how hard are you lifting on each exercise? And you don't want to just lift all out at a 10 for every single exercise. Well, one, because you can't, because if you were lifting at a 10 for every single exercise, it's just going to diminish by default. Like if you are lifting at a 10 effort out of 10, it's going to drop down as you go throughout the workout session because you're getting more and more tired, right? So being strategic about that and managing your fatigue appropriately over time, this is where a coach can be really helpful if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But to keep it super simple, most of the time in the gym, I would recommend going at an 8 out of 10 rate of perceived exertion. So on the effort scale, 8 out of 10 the majority of time, especially towards the beginning of your workout. Then towards the end of your workouts, maybe whenever you're doing more isolation exercises or things that don't risk a ton of injury. So think leg extensions. You can go to failure. You can do a 10 out of 10 on leg extensions, but if you try and do a 10 out of 10 on squats, your chance of injury goes way, way, way up. And that is not obviously a good idea. And then deloads, that's just going to be, for my clients, it's every 4 to 8 weeks or so. And that just means that you drop down. So however many sets you normally do, I would cut those down by 1 or 2, or cut them in half. And then also reduce the intensity of each one. So normally if you're doing 80%, you're going to drop down to 60%. And all that does is allow your fatigue to drop down, because as you lift week after week after week, you're building fatigue on your body, right? So you've got to allow your body to reduce that fatigue. And that's where deloads, a proper deload can be useful every 4 to 8 weeks or so. All right. And so, yeah, that's it for number 3. Injury prevention needs to be your highest priority. Number 4, and don't worry, we have basically 7 of these, but it'll be super quick. All right. Anyway, number 4, do more work over time via progressive overload. Research has been pretty clear that doing more volume and just total work in the gym over time seems to be the main driver of muscle gain. So doing more shit over time makes you build muscle better, which makes sense because, again, we have to force our muscles to adapt by doing harder and harder work over time, or more and more work over time. And that's just sets, reps, exercises, etc. That's a conversation for another day, but doing more total work over time will allow you to build more muscle over time. And that is what progressive overload is. You also want to focus on multi-joint lifts, so bench, squat, deadlift, overhead press, rows, etc., and their variations. These need to be 2/3 of your training. The majority of the time, you need to stick with these multi-joint compound lifts because they simply build the most muscle. Again, what do you think is going to build more muscle, a squat or a leg extension? It's just, if you could only pick one, it would be the squat. You're just going to build more muscle over time. So about 2/3 of your training, make it multi-joint lifts. And while it's not always possible, again, going back to progressive overload, you should aim to improve/increase sets, reps, weight, which is also like load, and or technique compared to what you did the previous week. Again, doing more work over time in the form of doing more sets, doing more reps, lifting more weight, and or making your technique better than it was the week before. And a good rule of thumb is be stronger than you were last year. You want to make sure you're gaining muscle year to year. Well, if you start off in year 1 and you can bench 135 for 5 reps, and in year 2 you can bench 135 for 10 reps, you're 100% going to have a bigger chest than you did last year. All right. Number 5, where are we at on time? I think we're good. 13 minutes. All right. We're going to go quick here. Number 5 is create a calorie surplus. I know this is probably one that you guys expected me to say. And again, while it's not a necessity, you don't have to be in a calorie surplus to gain muscle. You should consume more calories than you expend by eating more and or moving less for maximum growth. Having excess nutrients just allows your body to use those nutrients to build more tissue, i.e. muscle. And so when you're in a hypercaloric state, consume 0.7 to 1 grams of protein per pound of body weight, erring towards the higher end if you want to maximize your growth. For carbohydrates, when in a hypercaloric state, consume a minimum of 1 gram of carbs per pound of body weight. And fats, you want to consume a minimum of 0.3 grams per pound of body weight for overall health, hormone regulation, vitamin absorption, et cetera, et cetera. And make sure you do not fear gaining fat and do not fear gaining fat and spend extensive periods in a calorie surplus to reach your natural muscular potential. You need long periods of time eating in a caloric surplus. If you're just constantly, trying to gain weight for 2 weeks and then cutting for 2 weeks and then gaining weight for 2 weeks and then cutting for 2 weeks, you're just going to end up spinning your wheels. And the reason people do that is because they feel skinny, so then they eat a ton, right? But then whenever they eat a ton, then they gain some fat, and then they get worried, so then they end up cutting again. And this just continues over and over, and they don't actually make any progress at all. Which brings me to number 6, track your progress. Weigh yourself at least 4 times a week, including one weekend day, after you wake up and use the restroom, but before you eat, and take the average of those weights to find your actual weight. Focus on weekly trends, not day-to-day fluctuations. You want to aim for a weekly weight gain of 0.25% to 0.5% of your body weight in pounds. So again, about a pound per week is going to be standard for most people. Gaining a pound per week is about right. And then use your food log, weekly averages, waist measurements, and or pictures every 4 weeks to determine if you're heading in the right direction. Make sure to track your weight, sets, and reps in the gym. I would say at least on your main compound lifts. Try to beat what you did last week by improving at least one of those indicators. More weight, more sets, or more reps. And lastly, number 7, don't be an asshole to yourself or others. Smile more, breathe deeply, practice perspective, aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and drink less alcohol and do less drugs. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is Minisode number 49, How to Gain Muscle. Thank you, as always, for listening and for watching. See ya.